This is gonna be a story time about the time I got strep throat at my job. I had started working this job when I was a senior in high school, but I worked with children of all ages, and it was cool for the most part. I'm not gonna sit here and lie like I just loved that job, but some of the people there were actually pretty funny. I already knew one girl, but I did meet someone else who's really cool that checks up on me to this day still. So that's that. But anywho, this day I went to work and it was a normal day. If I remember correctly, it was in the morning. Since I work with children, they're just always near. Kids they don't know, kids know nothing about personal space. Nothing at all. You can't teach them anything, or even if you say, back up a little bit, they'll be right up on you, like, right here. And it's like, okay. But this day, this little girl, she was talking with me, and of course she was in my bubble. But I'm not gonna be rude and be like, all right, back up, honey, back up. I'm not gonna be rude and just like back her away, but she's speaking with me, and so she gets very close to me while I'm sitting down, and she starts talking about whatever. I remember she said something about hitting her toe on something, but she called it toesies, and ever since then I call my toes toesies because of her. So shout out to her, but also not shout out to her. So she's talking to me, and then all of a sudden she sneezes. Y'all know most kids do not know how to cover their mouth. When she sneezed, it got right on my face. I was so disgusted. I was like, I wiped it off my face, and she just kept talking. She kept talking. Mind you, I've worked with kids before, so I've gotten coughed on, sneezed on, just all the stuff. I've gotten all of it. And so this time I wasn't upset, but I was like, okay. Most of the time when I'm getting sneezed on, coughed on, or whatever, it's by a baby. And so I was like, oh man, this girl just sneezed on me. I'm gonna get sick tomorrow. But when I thought, oh, I'm gonna get sick tomorrow, I literally thought I was just gonna get a cold or something. We went on about our day. She went and did whatever she wanted to do, and I kept working. I say not the next day, but about 2 days later, and I was working in high school, so I didn't have a set schedule. I wasn't going every single day. So the next day, the day after I got sneezed on, I didn't go to work just because I wasn't on the schedule for that day. And then I woke up again the next day, and I felt horrible. Horrible, y'all. I could not talk anything. I was like, what is wrong with me? My throat was hurting. I couldn't swallow. I couldn't talk. I didn't even want to eat because it hurt, and I was hungry. But I just didn't eat because it was hurting so bad. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is wrong? So I'm just laying in bed, and I'm like, when I get a cold, I might get a sore throat, and it goes away like the next day, maximum by the next day. So I'm like, I'll wait it out and see if I feel better tomorrow. And I remember this is when my boyfriend and I first started really talking. And I was texting him like, yeah, I don't really feel good. I don't really know what happened. Like, man, I'll just wait it out. Because I started to get a fever. I just wasn't feeling good. And my throat felt the absolute worst. So I waited. I told my mom I don't feel good. And I was like, I also tell her I'll just see how I feel tomorrow. And I also took some medicine, like some regular cold medicine. So tomorrow comes around. My throat is feeling worse than it did the first day, y'all. Feels worse. And so I'm like, I couldn't swallow at that point. Before I could swallow and it hurt, but this day I couldn't swallow at all without feeling like poop. And I'm like, what is going on? So I go in the bathroom and I open my mouth extra wide to see like my tonsils. They're like this, y'all. They're huge. They're touching. And I'm like, oh, nah. And they're extremely red. And they're just hurting. Like, I tried to eat some stuff because I needed to eat. I tried to eat and it just felt like everything that went down, it just felt like it was cutting my throat open. I really don't know how to explain it. And so at this point my tonsils are very enlarged. And you know, when something happens and you don't really know what it is, you Google it. So I Googled it. It came up with some outlandish stuff, but one thing I did see was strep. And this day, y'all, I actually did have to work. And so I called off because I don't feel good. I'm not coming to work. I'm not coming. I Google it at this point. I'm self-diagnosing at this point. I Google, my tonsils are very large. I'm Googling that. And then they come up with some outlandish stuff like, you know, the crazy stuff. You know how Google is when you're self-diagnosed. So at this point, I'm freaking out. I'm like, oh, no. Oh, no. And then I start doing some more research. And then they're like, it could be strep throat if your tonsils are very enlarged. So then I told my mom, I'm like, yeah, I don't feel better. This feels 10 times worse. So at this point, she's like, all right, we'll go to the doctor. We go to urgent care. And I'm just sitting there thinking, I'm like, what could possibly be the reason that I feel this way right now? Then I go back 2 days in my head. I'm like, it has to be from when that little girl sneezed on me. It has to be because it landed right on my face. Right? Y'all, landed right on my face. And after I feel sick. So in my head, I'm like, yeah, it's the little girl. It's definitely that little girl. So I went to urgent care and they tested me for strep throat. And I definitely had it. They also tested me to see if I had the flu. I didn't have the flu, I just had strep throat. And it felt horrible. They gave me some, what's it called? What are those called? They gave me antibiotics for it. So I wouldn't be contagious. But they didn't give me anything that helped to help with the actual swelling. So I still felt horrible. I just wasn't contagious. I just had to let it make its run. Let it run its course. Which actually really sucked. Because I was in a lot of pain and I was freezing. Just everything. Luckily, no one else in my house got it. The lady testing me for strep told me to open my mouth. And she's like, yeah, your tonsils are huge. And I was like, And she suggested that that I remove them later on once I felt better. I was like, I don't know. I still have my tonsils, but so after I got sick, I had to take the antibiotics, and I told my job I just wasn't coming until I felt better, which they were fine with. But I actually just never went back because I don't want to keep getting strep throat from these kids that keep sneezing on me. So I never went back. If you work with children or anyone actually, and they don't give you personal space, push them off of you. back up 6 feet. Certain protocols, y'all know. Back up 6 feet and then continue your conversation, because I wouldn't wish that on anyone. I felt horrible. I don't remember even talking to anyone except my boyfriend. And I was barely talking to him because we weren't together yet. But yeah. That's the story time about how this little girl gave me strep throat.